Welcome back to this tutorial. I believe is the third video for the module 1 of this course. And in this video, we are still on Python syntax and we are going to be working with indentation. In this video, we are going to be looking at the following points. What does indentation mean? The use cases and the rule of indentation according to PEP 8 style guide. So come with me as we move over to Visual Studio Code in order to understand all of these concepts. Back to our VS Code, we still have our former code in our former video. So I'm going to clear this code and we are going to start from the very beginning. So before we move forward, in our Visual Studio Code, there is a button here by default, and when you hover on this button you will see something called extension. So we are going to come to the extension tab, this extension tab here, and you are going to hit this button. And after that, you already have Python suggested for you here because VS Code already detect that this is a Python file. So it's already suggesting some Python extension for us. So what we are going to do is that we are going to come to this very first one here and we are going to click on it, and then we are going to click on install. So we are going to wait for it to install, and now it has successfully been installed. So another extension that we are going to install is called Code Runner. So you're going to type in code and runner, and this is what we are going to install. So this will help us to run our code successfully. Well, you can choose to do without this, but this is just a personal preference because it helps me to understand better how my code is being executed. So when you are done installing this, you can close the extension tab and go back to your hello.py file. So like we said earlier in the introductory part of this video, we are going to be working with indentation. So what is indentation? Indentation simply means to leave a certain amount of white space before you start to write your lines of code. So you may ask, do I need to always indent my code when writing Python programs? Well, the answer is yes, especially when you are creating a block of code. Now, if you are just writing a one-line code that is standing alone and it has no association with other blocks of code, like declaring a variable or just writing a print statement, you do not need to indent your code. As a matter of fact, you are not supposed to indent your code when you are declaring a variable or you are just writing a print statement or you are just calling a function. But if you are writing a block of code simply means a collection of codes that are structured to perform similar function, an organized group of functions or group of tasks. You want this block of code to be able to access a variable, check the value of the variable, associate it with other variables, and make decisions whether to execute the code or not. As you can see right now, there are a lot of things happening. So, and we are not going to write all of this in just one single line of code. So you are going to group them together because all of them are working on a variable, right? So if you want to do this, you have to write the code in a way that Python understands. Python as a programming language, indentation is not just about being able to read the code. Indentation is also about you defining your block of code, telling Python that your block of code or that this group of code is starting from this line and then it is going all the way to this other line, and then by the time I leave this indentation, this particular block of code is finished. So that is the function of indentation in Python. So right now we've been able to establish what indentation is and what it is meant for or how it is being used in Python. So let's illustrate how this indentation works. I'm going to declare a variable called my fruit underscore fruit, and I'm going to set it to orange. Now here I'm just telling Python that the variable my fruit is orange, and after I set it to be orange, I would like to run a script that says, Python, please check if the value of my fruit variable is orange, and if it is orange, please perform this particular action for me, and if it is not orange, do something else. You understand? So if it is orange, we are going to print orange is my favorite fruit, and I'm going to write something that says else, and then I'm going to press enter, and I'm going to write another print statement that says print my my favorite is different. So I'm going to save this, and please, after we had installed the Python extension and the code runner extension, we now have this button by the top right side of our Visual Studio Code, and this will enable us to run this file directly on the terminal without coming to the terminal to type python hello.py. So from now going forward, we are not going to be typing python hello.py anymore. If we want to run our file, we can just hit this play button here, and yes, this line of code prints out. So the output here is from the extension code runner, and this button here is because we installed the Python extension. So right now, all of our outputs are going to be coming out from the output tab henceforth. So, and our program has run successfully, and this line of code prints for us, orange is my favorite fruit, and that is because orange is the value of my fruit is orange. So assuming I change this value to mango, and I save and run this again, now another line of code that says my favorite fruit is different has been printed for us on the screen. Now if you look, I'm writing a line of code telling Python, make a decision on this particular variable or on this particular item. After I declare that you need to make a decision on this particular item, then the action I want Python program to carry out after he has checked this variable my fruit, I now indent the code. Now let's do something a little tricky and take this print statement to the end of the file. Now you can see Visual Studio Code is already complaining, and it is telling us that I am expecting that you indent this code. So here, because this code is just standing alone and it has nothing to do with any other, it is not linked with any other code, it is not asking you to indent it. So let me write another variable here and set it to my name. So as you can see, there are no errors on line 3. So the reason we are having errors on line 6 is because line 6 is associated with a block of code. Line 6 is not standing alone. So if you are writing a block of code, after you declare your conditions or you declare your functions or your class or whatever thing you need to declare, the next lines of code, we are going to indent them, because if you do not indent them, your program will complain. So there is no need to run this. Okay, let us save this and run. So let's look at the lower part of our program, and it is saying indentation error. Expected an indented block after if statement on line 5. So here Python is telling us that please you did not indent your code. So now, unlike other programming languages, Python indentation to identify blocks of codes. But in other programming languages, indentations are majorly for code readability and a better understanding of the source code. But when it comes to Python, without indentation, your program will not run successfully. Now, if you noticed very well, by the time I just wrote if that is that and I hit enter, Python VS Code automatically indents this for me. Now there is a standard in Python indenting your code. Assuming I have this and I want to apply my indentation, the rule is that there should be at least one space indentation, and if you are using just one space bar, then you have to use it across all of your files. So I cannot use two here and use one here. It doesn't work like that. Well, your program may run very well, but the standard is that if you are using just one space indentation, you use it. If you are using more than one, you use it. But then what is the standard? Well, for Python, the standard is four space indentation. Another way you can achieve this is by hitting your tab button to take the beginning of the line four space backward. So if you look at this, I just hit my tab button and it moved my print statement four states inward. But then Python standard says that it is better to use your spacebar to count exactly four space instead of using your tab. So the standard is space over tab. While on indentation, there are scenarios whereby when you are declaring your variable or you are setting a list, you find out that your list or your variable becomes a bit longer than what you expect. And when you do not break it, your code might not really look good at all. So for instance, I want to declare a list of my list and I want to set it to a list of fruits, and I'm going to set them to orange, mangoes, pear, apple, and maybe pineapple. So assuming this list continues to go on and on and on, and probably my text is spanning across this entire line, and I look at it that this thing might not look very well. In order for my code to look better, I would want to probably move this to the next line. Now there are rules of indentation here as well. So when you are writing, this is what we call continuing lines. So, and I'm going to duplicate this data here so that you all will understand what I mean. So now you can see that this might not exactly be looking so good. So right now, what I might do is that I would want this part of the code to be moved to the next line. So if you are moving it to the next line, how am I going to write it? Am I going to start it from the very beginning? No, this is not how it should be. Okay, so when I move it to the next line, what should it look like? Well, it should at least have four space tab, like we already know, but then you can give more than four space tab, okay, just for clarity of your code. So here you are vertically wrapping your items. So the first square bracket is at the beginning of the line and the second square bracket is at the end of the other line. So, but there are other ways that people might prefer to do it. You can decide to you want this thing to be in multiple lines. Now, this is the standard to do that. If you want this thing to look like this, you have to use something called hanging indent. And that means that the braces are going to be standing on their own, and the objects that are wrapped around the braces are going to be aligned vertically. I'm going to bring one of these elements here to make this code look better. So if for whatever reason there are other elements here, the standard is that when you are using this type of indenting is called hanging indents. So if you are using your hanging indent, the first braces at the top and the second bracket or parenthesis will be standing alone. So you are not going to insert any element alongside this first bracket or on the same line with the last bracket. I hope this makes sense to you. So for instance, I want to print every member of this list. I'm going to write my print statement here, and I'm going to pass in my list, and I'm going to clear this output. And again, I'm going to save the code and I'm going to run it. So right now we have two print statements, the one that is from these conditionals, and then the second print statement that is just printing every member of this list. So I hope that from this video, you've been able to understand perfectly how to work with indentation in Python and how to write continuation lines in Python. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one.